The luxury four-door sedan market is extremely competitive. The Audi A6, BMW 5 Series, and Mercedes E-Class has ruled the segment for years. But does this Scandinavian beauty have what it takes to dethrone them all? Let's find out. The 2017 S90 shares a lot of styling cues from the XC90. Now, the XC90 was a vehicle that we absolutely loved, and it's won tons and tons of awards. So that is a compliment. In fact, when I saw this revealed at the Detroit Auto Show last year, I was absolutely blown away. Under the hood, well, it's not as pretty. It actually has one of the most boring and ugly plastic covers over the engine I've ever seen. It's pretty tricky though. We've got a 4-cylinder that's both turbocharged and supercharged. How crazy is that? Produces 316 horsepower and 295 pound-feet of torque. Thanks to that crazy combination, we also get 22 miles per gallon city and 31 on the highway, which is better than the Audi. Despite weighing 100 pounds less than the Audi, however, its 0 to 60 time is a second slower at 5.7 seconds. The A6 has a very different powertrain. Under the hood lies a 3-liter supercharged V6 that makes more power than the S90, 333 horsepower and 325 pound-feet of torque. Mated to this 8-speed Tiptronic transmission means 0 to 60 can happen in a second faster than the S90, 4.7 seconds. I much prefer the motor in the A6 to the S90. Having a 2-liter supercharged and turbocharged engine means it's so complex sometimes it really doesn't know what to do. This 3-liter supercharged V6 doesn't even feel supercharged. It's naturally aspirated feeling with a bit more power. The power curve is very linear. It surges forwards up until redline and sounds decent. The transmission is definitely a shortcoming of this car if you're buying it to be driver focused. Obviously the S and RS models have a better transmission, but even on BMW's base models, they shift quickly with the paddles. This, however, has very slow response. It almost seems like you've got to wait about a second after you click the paddle to get anything from it. That being said, I'm glad they did include paddle shifters. It does make this car feel a little bit more like a sports car, unlike the S90 that doesn't have them at all. The interior is definitely the highlight of this vehicle. The Swedish engineers and designers have done a fantastic job at really changing the game for Volvo. We've got this beautiful 9.3-inch touchscreen in the center. It's easier to use and better looking than Audi's MMI system. Everything is just really intuitive, and having the touch feedback is really awesome. It feels like they've styled it a bit after an iPhone or an iPad in the sense that you think, maybe I can scroll through things instead of just tapping, and it turns out you can. Everything's just pretty intuitive. Speaking of Apple, you've got Apple CarPlay on this vehicle as well. We've also got a 19-speaker Bowers & Wilkins sound system that is one of the best I've ever heard. We've also got 3 different sound settings, including studio and concert hall. Concert hall adds more reverb and has a bigger sound to it. The vertically positioned vents are really cool, and everything in the interior feels like it was extremely well thought out. This knurled aluminum look to all of the different buttons, most notably on the start-stop, not a button, but a turn dial, as well as the drive mode selection. It is interesting when somebody hops in the car for the first time, figuring out how to turn the car on. Of course, when you own it for a while, that becomes second nature, but you turn it clockwise to start the engine instead of pushing a button. I love Volvo's choice of materials for the interior. Everything flows together so nicely, and the color combinations, there's so many different colors in this interior. We've got brown and black and silver and white. They all flow together much better than you think they would. It's pretty impressive, and the open pore walnut is some of the best looking trim I've ever seen, and it has an excellent texture. When you touch it, you can actually feel the grain. It doesn't look like fake tacky wood that's just jammed on there and has this weird glossy shiny appearance to it. The A6 feels more driver focused in the interior. The seating position and the range of seating positions that you can have are much more comfortable for performance driving. You've got this long wraparound piece in the front dash, kind of reminds me of styling cues from the Jaguar XJL that we reviewed a while back. Audi is all about refinement. The overall exterior and interior of the A6 hasn't changed much in many years, but it does look better and better each time. They've upgraded the MMI system a little bit so it's easier to use. We've got a very crystal clear heads-up display in front of me telling me the speed limit. I also think the tachometer and dash layout of the A6 feels more geared towards performance driving than the S90 does. You've got an analog tach and speedo, whereas you have a digital readout for all your other information. But with the S90, it looks almost too nice and not aggressive enough for it to have any sort of sports car characteristics. Now, that's not really what it's for. It is a luxury car first and foremost, and then performance is kind of necessary to keep up with other brands. This car is more of a hybrid luxury and performance car where both are good, neither one is exceptional, but the driving characteristics are definitely better than the S90. We've got 4 different driving modes that can be activated via the drive mode selector in the center console: Eco, Comfort, Dynamic, and Individual. Dynamic obviously heightens throttle response, sets the transmission up for a more sporty drive. Eco, interestingly enough, above 40 miles an hour has a coasting feature where it puts the car in neutral basically and shuts off engine braking so that you can maintain speed longer. It's a very spacious vehicle, although it does feel a lot bigger than the A6. Part of that is due to the higher belt line. It makes the car look beautiful on the outside, and if you don't mind driving a vehicle that appears bigger on the inside, then it's no problem at all. Some people like cars that feel like they're shrinking around them when they're in the driver's seat. I'm one of those people, but there's no denying this is absolutely stunning. The seats are stylish. This is the inscription model. We've got that written there on the headrest. Now, there's no paddles located on the steering wheel. Perhaps that's a hint that Volvo doesn't really want this to be a sports sedan. It's more of a premium luxury sedan. And that's what they've done very, very well. It feels more luxurious than the A6 does. It feels more expensive and a classier vehicle than the Audi, while being priced $2,000 less. The catch is, if you really like driving, which of course I do, this really isn't a driver's car. It's all luxury and quality, and it doesn't have that driving performance that you'd expect from its German competitors like BMW and Audi. It feels more in line with Mercedes in terms of its driving dynamics. We've got 4 different driving modes: Comfort, Auto, Dynamic, and Individual. In Dynamic mode, you've got heightened throttle response and the car feels like it wants to go a lot more. Comfort mode, obviously self-explanatory. With the 8-speed Tiptronic, you can either shift using the paddles, or you can bump it over to the right to put it into manual mode and shift with the gear lever. I do find it interesting that BMW and Audi are always backwards with which way you press the lever. So in this case, you push it forwards to do an upshift and backwards to do a downshift, which to me seems a little bit counterintuitive. Inside, the Audi is very, very spacious. It looks smaller than the S90 from the outside, but when you hop on in the back, you've got plenty of legroom, just as much as the S90, as well as headroom. It's a nice place to be. I like the way the interior looks, but Audi hasn't really changed their interiors in so long. It doesn't feel dated, it just seems not out of the ordinary. Unlike something like the Mercedes E-Class, which has the beautiful displays, different color options for interior ambient lighting, and just an overall better styled interior. The Audi feels more planted and stable than the S90 as well. Changing lanes, you feel like you have a little bit less body roll, and it makes you want to go fast. Whereas the S90, it makes you feel incredibly relaxed. Of course, this has all-wheel drive as well, and upgraded 19-inch wheels that look very nice. The tachometer and speedo are fully digital. They look very nice, and in between that, we've actually got maps, so you don't have to look over to the right for navigation. You can simply look straight. Although nowadays, most people just use their phone, it is nice to have. This is the first car that comes standard with semi-autonomous driving capabilities. So if we put on cruise control, let's activate that. It activates pilot assist and is actually able to steer the car in the lines as well as track the car in front of you to speed up and slow down. Volvo says it's extremely helpful in bumper-to-bumper traffic because it can come to a complete stop and then start the car up again. I agree, it really takes the edge off of annoying bumper-to-bumper traffic. I find it very interesting that the 8-speed automatic transmission in this Volvo actually shifts faster than Audi's when using the center shifter here. Why they didn't put paddles, I don't really know. Whether they expected that the people buying the car wouldn't use them, very possible. But now that most cars with a decent amount of power, and 316 horsepower is quite a lot, typically come with paddles. I think they kind of missed the boat there. And because the transmission, because it didn't have paddles, I didn't expect the transmission to respond well. Maybe that would be a weak point. But it actually, the second you shift forward, it shifts. That's awesome. I've been really impressed with the Volvo. I've been driving it for a couple days, and I'm really excited that I get it for a full week because it's just really comfortable to drive. The Audi is an amazing vehicle as well, more on the performance side, this more on the luxury side. From an exterior standpoint, both the Audi and the Volvo are good looking. I do like the front end of the Volvo a little bit more with the Thor's Hammer front lights, which actually look very similar to Audi's front lights. Something about the proportions of the grille and the high belt line just look perfect. The rear, I have trouble deciding. I think I might have to go with the A6 on the rear, and then the interior, this absolutely wins in terms of design, hands down. One thing I'm not a huge fan of with Volvo self-driving, although it works really well, it actually hasn't failed on me once, is it actually kind of locks the steering wheel. It takes control of the steering wheel for you, and the motors provide a lot of resistance if you try to take control of the wheel. I like to sometimes have my hands on the wheel, obviously, when using the self-driving feature, and if you try to give it a little turn, it almost feels like it's resisting you from putting any inputs while it's controlling it, and because it's a computer and it can make mistakes, I'd like it to be looser so that if you do touch it, you are still fully in control without having to yank it to let it know that you're putting in inputs. Mercedes system, the steering wheel responds to your inputs much quicker and it doesn't meet you with all that resistance. In the front, we've got heated and ventilated front seats. Thanks to the cold weather package, we actually have heated rear seats and a heated steering wheel as well. That's activated easily on the center screen here. It's also telling me the battery level on my iPhone, which unfortunately is always near zero because I'm always using it for social media. We've got a very clear colored heads-up display that shows the speed limit, my speed, as well as the fact that Pilot Assist is going on right now, helping me with steering. So I think you've got to decide what you really want in a car. There is no saying that the A6 is better than the S90 or the S90 is better than the A6 as an overall car, because that's simply not the case. Now, at certain things, one is definitely better than the other. Luxury-wise, technology-wise, and looks, I think the S90 takes the cake. Don't be fooled though, just because it's a Volvo and not an Audi does not mean that it's not expensive. This Audi spec is $68,000, and because the Volvo is the top of the line T6 inscription model, it's $66,400. From a performance standpoint, the Audi definitely wins. If you want something that's fun to drive on a daily basis, but is also spacious and luxurious, this is the way to go. I also think the wheels on this vehicle look better than the top of the line wheels do on the S90. They've got a very similar front headlight setup. It's interesting. Volvo has developed their Thor's Hammer look, and now Audi, who pretty much invented the beautiful LED daytime running light strips, has made theirs sharper, and they turn out looking very, very similar. In terms of brakes, I like the way the pedal feels a lot more on the A6. The S90 is just too touchy. It's good in terms of safety. If you just touch the brake, it slows you down more than you want. But from a performance perspective and what I'm used to as a driver, I'm much more comfortable driving the Audi. So there you have it. There's no clear winner. If you want a more luxurious, more comfortable driving experience, definitely go for the S90. If you want a luxury car that's also more fun to drive on the back roads, the Audi A6 is definitely the ticket. Honestly, you can't go wrong either way. Special thanks to Fred Lavery Audi of Birmingham, Michigan for making this review possible and supplying us with this beautiful A6. Honestly, this is one of the best spec A6 I've ever seen. It's available there now. Check it out. Links in the description to this car I drove. Hope you enjoyed this video. Like always, please browse our channel and subscribe. I look forward to seeing you next video.